Welcome back, guys. So we are on episode 14 of the Inner Alchemy podcast. I hope everybody's doing well as can be expected. I know it's kind of intense right now, isn't it, with all everything that's being disclosed. The disclosure is ramping up. Today we're not doing one of the heavier topics that I could talk about. We are talking about polarity principles, okay? Masculine, feminine polarity stuff, okay? Now, obviously, this is being taught really widely in the spiritual community. And I want to kind of speak on it because there are some really problematic things proliferating, and people who are teaching it to, frankly, like, I don't want to say, I don't want to be like a gatekeeper or, talk about who's, allowed to talk on different subjects or who has the authority to speak on different subjects, okay? I'm not one of those people that's like, you need to be accredited or whatever, because how can you really be accredited as an alchemist? You can be initiated, but it's about you waking up into your sovereignty. So you don't really need permission from anyone to teach on this stuff if you are a sincere seeker, okay? And if you're always being guided to the truth. But there are some people teaching this that seem to have only a very, very basic, rudimentary understanding of these principles and are therefore teaching it from that very basic and incomplete mindset. And it is causing some very real harm, okay? It's causing very, very real harm in people's lives, okay? It's possibly even doing more damage than not knowing this stuff, okay? So you have to be really mindful about who you're learning from, and I'm going to share some principles that you really have to look for when you're listening to people teaching polarity stuff. If they don't seem to have these principles integrated into their teachings, then they're teaching faulty, incomplete codes that can do more damage, okay? So basically, the idea of gender polarity, masculine energy, feminine energy, and how to be more in your masculine energy, how to be more in your feminine energy for the purpose, particularly it tends to be taught a lot in kind of relationship space, right? Tantra teachers and spiritual teachers and dating coaches and relationship coaches have started, talking a lot about this stuff. And it has a foundational principles in occult science. So, systems like yogic sciences, Tantra, Hermetic philosophy, Taoism, if you study those, then you'll basically, I think you should just study those. You obviously, it can be helpful listening to creators who teach those things within certain contexts, like, how to be more in your feminine energy in dating. It can help you form new neural pathways when you go out into the world. But understanding the fundamentals of what is masculine energy and what is feminine energy is going to help you way more, because when you go to the original sources to study the original teachings, you'll understand that it's not about, let's say you're a cisgendered woman that is attracted to cisgendered men. It's not just about you being in your feminine and him being in his masculine. And this is key, okay? This is the main crux of it, okay? Once you've got this, you probably don't need to watch the rest of this video, but you can, because I'm going to share some good insights. But it's about basically uniting the two polarities is the ascension pathway, okay? It's how we awaken. You literally, like in yoga and tantra, is how you have those kundalini. When they talk about energy orgasms, that's the kundalini rising and blasting out of your body and meeting with the Godhead, okay? So literally the pathway back home. And it happens when the two are in balance. That's known as the alchemical wedding or the divine marriage, okay, or hieros gamos in the Greek tradition. And that's what I teach here, okay? That's what we're all about here. And that's why we talk about all the other subjects. We don't just talk about masculine, feminine, and dating. We talk about awakening, and awakening to awakening to the many illusions on this planet. Because when that starts to happen, your pineal will open as well. So you'll be able to discern truth more easily than you could before. Okay, not that you'll never make mistakes or that you'll never be deceived again, but you'll become much more discerning. Okay, so it's not just about dating, but it will help with dating and relationships. Okay, which is why many of us are initially initiated onto this path, because many of us struggled with interpersonal relationships, because it is, the divine mirror, okay, and shows us where we're out of alignment and where we need to come back into alignment so that we can journey back home. So yeah, it's about balance. Like, you can only have that alchemical wedding within the temple of the body when your masculine and your feminine energy are in balance. And when you've healed your wounds around, let's say you're a woman, when you've healed your wounds around not just the masculine, but also your own feminine energy, okay? And those can, be implanted into us via societal belief systems and also mother-father wounding, okay? So in this episode, I want to speak to some common, just some common, sound bites that often proliferate in polarity spaces. That some of them have some truth to them, or some of them are just downright nonsense. And I just want to add some nuances and some caveats, or just completely debunk them entirely, okay, depending on what they are. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first one is that, all the feminine energy leaning back, okay? Feminine is about resting, okay? Masculine is about dynamic action and movement, okay? If you look in Taoism, the masculine yang energy is movement, forward, particularly forward directional movement, thrusting, because of the lingam, right? And feminine energy is about sitting back, being still, leaning back and receiving, okay? Now, in Tantra, it's a little bit different, because in Tantra, Shakti, masculine, is actually about stillness. It's an erect pillar that's still, okay? And this is where it gets interesting, okay? Because you got to understand that it's not an exact science that this is masculine, this is feminine, okay? Because none of us are completely masculine or completely feminine, okay? I have a lot of masculine traits. My beloved has a lot of feminine traits, okay? Because we're both balanced and we're on the pathway back home into divine union. So in Tantra, the Shakti is movement, and specifically dynamic movement and unstructured movement, okay? Masculine is more forward directional movement. So when you understand those principles, then obviously then you can figure out whether you're in your masculine or your feminine more, but ultimately it's about being in both, okay? And I'll speak to this throughout the video, okay? So what a lot of dating coaches are teaching is you lean back in your feminine energy, don't initiate, because the egg doesn't travel to the sperm travels to the egg, okay? Which is great, and I love it, okay? I love the way that allegory, or that example, explains this principle, that you let him come to you. You don't need to chase a man, okay? But there's a little bit of nuance that's missing here, okay? If you're just going to lean back and sit in your house and not let anyone see you, the only men that you're going to attract are, like, how is a man firstly even going to see you? Or if you're just going to be minding your own business, walking down the street, and expect a man to literally chase you down the street, the only man you're going to attract is a predator, okay? So there does have to be a little bit of give and take, okay? You have to give him a green light. There has to be a dropping of the hanky, so to speak. So you don't sit there like a wallflower on the edge of the room waiting for him to come to you, okay? Because especially, look, and I do want to make a distinction between masculine and men, okay? Because we all have both energies, okay? The masculine is not always just the man, but in general, when the masculine pursues, so what they're missing with the whole the egg doesn't travel to the sperm thing, is that, yeah, okay, all the sperms travel to the egg, but the egg will select which sperm she wants to fertilize her. She doesn't just let whoever gets there faster to fertilize her. She'll wait and then choose the best one. So, this is a great allegory, but, the sperm doesn't shoot from across the room into your womb. Okay. There's obviously quite a lot that needs to happen for that sperm before that sperm can even enter you. Okay. So you do have to kind of get yourself into a man's orbit, start up a conversation. No, don't shoot your shot and be like, hey, I really like you, can I get your number? For me, that's, I don't know, you can do that I'm not telling anybody what to do and what should work for them, but to me that's a little bit too forward, a little bit too masculine. I do think that should be the man's job. But I don't see anything wrong with striking up a conversation, or just like, just saying hey, or I've had it happen plenty of times where I've reached out to a man. This was actually a platonic friend of mine, for example. Okay, where I reached out, said, hey, I'm going to be in town. I'm going to be in your neighborhood. You want to meet and grab lunch? And I only saw this person as a friend. But we started hanging out for months and months and got really close as friends. And then he told me that he was in love with me. Okay, so a lot of this polarity stuff where they're teaching women that you shouldn't pursue, because if you pursue a man, then you're going to get a man that's ambivalent about you, and the man that really wants you will go after you. Like, how is he supposed to really want you if he doesn't even have the opportunity to get to know you, because you never even put yourself into his orbit, you never even struck up a conversation? Okay, like, your soulmate isn't necessarily going to recognize you by how you look, okay, or even just like your frequency. Sometimes it can happen, okay, where they recognize the frequency, but sometimes it can take longer. They have to talk to you, they have to get to know you, they have to know your qualities and your values and what you're about before they're going to start recognizing you and start to fall in love with you. So yeah, you can't be too much of a wallflower. So I do think that some of that stuff, with the teachings, it is useful. I'm not knocking it, okay? I do find some of those teachings useful. It's because it's about you being in your body, okay? Rather than moving outwards, okay? With the lingam obviously protrudes from the body, and your feminine energy, it's more receptive. All your internal organs are inside your body, right? So your energy, excuse me, I got an itch in my eye. Your feminine energy, keeping it contained, can ignite that masculine polarity. But you don't want to be leaning back so much that he thinks that you're not interested, okay? Taking an interest in things that he's doing, or, in the early stages, striking up a conversation and just giving him that opening through which, look, if he's not showing interest and not reciprocating and not matching your energy, then obviously lean back. That stuff does work, okay? I definitely endorse that, okay? I don't endorse, doing too much, doing more than what he's doing, giving him more than you've given him, because, giving is masculine, receiving is feminine. I'm going to speak to the nuances here as well, okay? Because there's also some stuff around this that's being taught that I don't like either. Okay, so one that's often one that I've seen shared for the men learning about polarity is don't be sharing your emotions. Keep your emotions to yourself, okay? Your woman does not want to, she's going to get turned off by you sharing your emotions, because emotions are feminine energy and it depolarizes your relationship, okay? Building a healthy, successful relationship with somebody is not always about creating sexual polarity, okay? Sometimes when you want to create deep emotional intimacy with a person that you're going to be creating a life with, like a lifetime bond, you have to show all parts of your humanness, okay? With soulmate relationships, when you do the soul merge, you will literally at some point know everything about each other, where they are in their ascension journey. It might not happen within the human life. It might happen once they've both passed and are in the spirit realm. But at some point they will merge into one being, well, they already are one being. They're two emanations of one being, okay? I understand that not everybody studying polarity necessarily believes in genetic equals, or, I don't like the term twin flames, because there's so much new ageisms that proliferate around the whole twin flame concept. But essentially, your twin flame, who's basically like it's another physical incarnation of your soul. You basically share the same soul. It's one soul in two bodies, okay? That is the union. So you will eventually know everything about each other. So trying to hide your feminine qualities as a man from your woman because she might be turned off by you, that's just so manipulative and nonsense, okay? Like, yeah, okay, I get if a man is like really overly emotional and really like a drama king, and takes everything personally, and he's like more emotional than his feminine partner, and he always wants space for his emotions to be held, and doesn't hold space for her emotions, and wants to be the feminine partner in the relationship, then yes, it can depolarize your relationship, and as a woman, it can give you the ick. Okay, I have experienced this in a relationship. And wants his partner to always lead and take the masculine role, and he wants to be the emotional one, and everything's a problem, and he's always getting upset and overly sensitive and taking everything personally, then yeah, that's going to depolarize your relationship, of course, 100%. I agree with that. But showing vulnerability and sharing emotions as a man is crucial for emotional intimacy, and most healthy, balanced women want that from you, okay? They want that emotional intimacy from you, okay? They want to be able to hold space. Holding space is a masculine principle. They want to be able to be that for you. And, they want you to also be that for them as well, okay? Obviously, as women, I do feel like, as a woman, I have a bias where I like a man to care more about my feelings than he does about his own. And that might be something that I need to work on. That might be something where I need to stop being, like having double standards, or wanting to use female privilege against my male partner, and that his emotions are just as important, because, I have studied a lot of this stuff. So, and that's something that I've been reflecting on, and I don't know where I stand on it just yet, but I wanted to be honest with you guys about my process. I think as women, we do like a man to really cherish our emotions, and to make us feel like he really cares about our emotions, and it hurts him to hurt our feelings. But I also find a man who's so comfortable in his masculinity that he's willing to be seen in his feminine, in his vulnerability, and and share his heart and cry even, I find so sexy. Like, I've always found that really sexy. And to say that women are turned off by that, it's just, a lot of the stuff that's being taught in the polarity space around this is really toxic. Like, they'll say, feminine women are turned off by this, and the women that like it are masculine women. And it's just like, we're not one or the other. If a woman has a lot of masculine traits, to the point of masculinized woman, oftentimes she'll actually be in wounded masculine, which means she'll also have wounded feminine in her shadow, or she'll flip back and forth between the other. She'll be internally polarized, okay? Nobody's one or the other. A masculine man also has feminine qualities, okay? I've seen men who are very much expressing their toxic masculine. Their feminine is so wounded, okay? And you'll see them polarize into it, like, regularly. Like, they can't handle... they don't have an embodied feminine, okay? They take things personally, and they can get manipulative, or just they're very chaotic, and it's just, nobody's one or the other. There's no woman who's just a masculine woman. She'll be internally polarized, or she'll have her feminine that's in her shadow. But if you're having a relationship with her and you're being intimate with her, you will get to see those sides of her where she will go into the wounded feminine, okay? So as you both heal and alchemize and balance your energies, eventually we will all become more and more balanced, okay, where we won't be so much going between wounded feminine and wounded masculine, and it will be more healthy expressions of masculine and feminine, and those will be unique to you as an individual, and then also as a couple with whoever you are in union with. So yeah, overall, I mean, look, back me up, ladies. Let me know if this resonates. Do you like it when your man shares his heart with you, when he's vulnerable with you, when he shares how he's feeling? Even if it's like, okay, there's this stereotype that like women, when they say that they want, you know, you to be emotionally vulnerable with them and they want you to share feelings, it's usually that they want you to listen to their feelings and they're not interested in your feelings. And they want you to share how you feel about them. They don't really want to share like your insecurities or like what you struggle with as a man. That's kind of toxic, okay? Like that's a toxic mindset. We should, as women, it's something that we need to work on. If there is truth to that, and definitely some women, they do freak out a little bit when men share like things that they struggle with. And a lot of those things we can't possibly understand as women. But if we want to collectively heal and experience that in a marriage, we do have to be able to try and understand where our men are coming from, or masculine, where our women are coming from. Or if you're, you know, different, you're a man who's attracted to men, you know, you may understand the masculine experience, but you'll both still also have those polarities within you. But I think, you know, for gay and lesbian couples, I think the polarity conversation is probably not so much of a conversation. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have some gay friends who, you know, study polarity and use it because, you know, they do have like some of them have quite polarized relationships where there's one of them that's the more masculine one and one that's the more feminine one, but it's not always the case, okay? Sometimes in your relationship you're going to be more, let's say you're two women that are gay in a gay relationship, you might be more masculine sometimes and in some areas, and your partner might be the more feminine one, and then sometimes it switches. And it's the same with heterosexual relationships as well. Sometimes I'm more in the masculine when when me and Dom are working on certain projects that are within my wheelhouse and my skill set. Like I will often take the lead on those things because I know more about them, and vice versa. Most of the time he's more in the masculine. When, like I will say, in my experience, when you get together with, in my experience, to be honest, once you find your soulmate, a lot of this stuff goes out the window. Like it was helpful that I learned this stuff, but in my experience, there was just so much natural polarity between us that we didn't really have to like pretend or try and be more in the masculine or me more in the feminine. Like I naturally was in my feminine quite a lot when we first got together, because he's a sexy man. he was naturally more in his masculine because, you know, there was just natural polarity between the two of us. Okay, so the masculine leads. Okay, yes, masculine energy is about leadership, you know, that's as signaled by the lingam, and the feminine is kind of more like a following type of energy. However, as I said before, sometimes you're going to be the more if you're a woman, sometimes you're going to be the more masculine one in that area, okay? It's not like the way that we categorize things as being masculine and feminine is socially constructed as well. So, you know, like for example, let's looking at like the whole Christian conservative trad wife people, they say that the women's domain is in the home and things like that. Well, she leads in that area. Okay, or when it comes to like what the kids should be eating, or how to look after their boo-boos, and like how to heal them when they get sick, like she's leading in those areas. She's probably usually making those decisions, okay, because that's her domain. So it really you can apply that to anything, okay? Let's say, for example, the two of you run a business together. your area as a woman might be the accounting, because you're trained as an accountant. You're going to lead in that area. So this whole, the masculine leads, is just, you're going to lead in the areas that are your strengths, and the other person will follow until that person develops those. Because in the soulmate union, you will both actually start to develop each other's skill sets, and not, you know, not necessarily like in the first few years. This obviously will happen over many decades. Yeah, so I do think that understanding that the concept of masculine leadership can be helpful just in the early dating stages. Not just in the early dating stages, but even just moving the relationship forward into marriage. Because I think as women, we do feel much more cherished when the man shows up, when he initiates contact, when he calls us instead of us having to call him and us having to initiate contact, when he's planning the dates, when he's taking us out, when he's picking us up, opening doors for us, things like that, you know, picking up the check, when he's the one to, you know, get down on one knee and propose to us. But ultimately, so he's moving the relationship forward, but ultimately it's also a conversation that's being had between the two of you. So with like planning dates and things like that, like you need to be giving him some input about what kind of places you like to go to, like what kind of things you like doing. So is he really leading then? Like, yeah, okay, it's great that when he plans dates and things like that. And that can bring a lot of polarity, sexual polarity, and, you know, alchemical fire to your union, which makes it very, very hot and sexy. But, you know, like, for example, when he is leading the relationship forward and leading it to marriage, I don't think that like an engagement should come as a surprise. Like, oh, you know, he just popped the question and I had no idea. Like you should be having that conversation about, you know, whether you're both on track for marriage, when is a good time for you guys to be getting married, okay? Because marriage is a huge commitment. It involves a lot of logistical and financial commitments to each other, okay? You have to have a lot of conversations about future plans, about family, about finances, about property. It could involve immigration conversations. You know, there's a lot of planning that needs to take place. So you guys should be on the same page and discussing it equally before that happens. I mean, in my opinion, I don't think it should be coming out of nowhere and he just pops a question and you weren't ready for it, and maybe there's things that you need to sort out in your life before you're ready to like make that lifetime commitment to someone. So yeah, like, yes, the masculine leads, but firstly, the masculine is not always the man, and secondly, there should definitely be like a give and take, okay? Like I've said in previous videos, okay, the masculine leads, but the feminine steers, okay? And it's through her feelings and her body, her emotions, which is feminine principle, her body, which is the feminine, okay? The masculine, the mind is masculine, the body is feminine. And so the feelings that she gets in her body, her emotions, her emotional body is how, you know, I feel this, I think that this would be good. You know, we are like, I do believe that women in general are more intuitive, just because of the way our bodies are designed, the way our hormones are designed, the way that we respond to emotion can naturally make us more intuitive. And because we have to protect ourselves, because we're more vulnerable, you know, we are the ones that, you know, take care of small infants. But yeah, feel free to debate me on that, okay? Okay, the masculine provides. Okay, so y'all know, if you've been with me for a while, I'm not a 50-50 girl. I definitely do like a masculine provider. I don't think that 50-50 is fair for women at all. But at the same time, I am not an advocate of the trad wife life, okay? The whole trad wife thing that is proliferating, I think, is so harmful and so damaging, and it's going to set you up for abuse, ladies, if you're not careful. And a lot of the people that are promoting trad wife, these trad wife influencers, are not trad wives. They have a business, they're content creators, and they're building, abundance and wealth for their families through promoting this lifestyle. So it's a con. Like, I'm not saying that there aren't trad wives out there, but I mean, personally, look, I think it's dangerous. I think it will set, it makes women very vulnerable. I think if you do want to do it and that is your goal, there are ways to make sure that to ensure your safety and your protection. And that is to have equal access to household finances. Everything he earns is yours too. Okay. If you're married, what's his is yours and what's yours is his, but you should also have your own separate account. I tend to like some of the Islamic teachings around this, which is his money is your money and your money is your money. Okay, so whatever you bring in is for you, your future. Maybe you want to put something towards savings and investments for your kids, but it's to cover you and an exit fund if things should go south or if he should pass away. Those things can happen. If a man truly loves you and is devotional to you, he would want you to have that. Okay, he would want you to have that for your protection, and for his children's protection, for the mother of his child. Okay, to be protected should anything happen to him. If he's not giving you, and personally, if I were in that situation, I would want to be, not even just in that situation, but this is how I want my marriage to be the financial household manager. And this is how it was, but in the back in the day, they don't talk about this too much. Okay, when they talk about like trad wife and how it was back in the day, and that women were happy and you're being lied to, that all women were being abused and things like that. And it's not really true. A lot of women were being abused. A lot of women couldn't leave. Yes, some women were maybe happy or kind of happy, but they're not taking into consideration that a lot of women were trained in household managing and budgeting, and they had full access to household finances, and they would take care of the mortgage and the bills and, and the budget. Okay. His money was hers as well. Okay, it was money for the family. It wasn't like he had control of the finances. If he has full control of the finances and you don't get given access to that, or he gives you like a little allowance, that's financial abuse, ladies. Okay, let's be clear about that. Okay, you should be able to have full access to that for savings and investments, not just for your own little, I know some women who are in these kinds of relationships and they're given money for their own discretionary spending. If you're not being given money to build your own, wealth, like your investments or retirement fund and things like that, you're being financially abused. Okay, because if you stayed home and avoided building a career to look after his children, what you have to think about what could happen if he cheats on you or if he dies. Even if you do trust him and go, I don't want to look at my husband so negatively, he could die tomorrow. He could get hit by a bus. Okay, obviously it's not very nice to think about these things, but I hear people saying, oh, well, that's what life insurance is for and things like that. It's just like, but you don't have any monetizable skills. Like, and I do think that does need to change. I don't really like how, women who will manage a household and look after children, often being their husband's personal assistant and, doing, managing budgets and running the house like a business is not seen as a marketable skill. I do think that needs to change. But part of that is also because of reasons like, an employer can't necessarily ask your husband or your kids for a reference. They can't look up the company that you used to work at and see if it's legit, see its kind of performance and see how well it's doing in the marketplace, like they can if you were in the workplace. Okay, so I think that some of what's being taught is a little bit dangerous if it lacks this kind of nuance, okay, in ways that women can protect themselves. Now, I know that not everybody is saying these things. A lot of women who are teaching this kind of level up mindset will say things like, use use the opportunity that you get from having a provider husband or a provider boyfriend to invest in yourself, to educate yourself, to start a business, you know, to build investment funds and things like that. And that's great advice. But I don't really like the whole like using men as like a stepping stone that you see in a lot of like level up spaces. I think that that's really manipulative, and you're going to end up in relationships that aren't your highest. Okay, that's probably not your soulmate if you're using him for money, and it's gross, and you can't complain if a man uses you and if you're doing that to other people. And yeah, on the 50-50 thing, I think that's also bullshit, because let's be honest, like, we give our bodies to birth the next generation. Okay, so unless your husband is financially compensating you for that, not just in terms of like what your body's just gone through and the time that you've had to take off from work, but also how it set you back in your career and how it's going to impact you going forward, or just the fact that you might have to take on more part-time roles, you know, and things like that. It does impact women financially quite heavily, having children. Okay, it disadvantages us in the workplace. So if your man is compensating you for that financially, then maybe we can talk about 50-50. But a lot of, you know, I saw this one Reddit thread, you know, I wish I could find it and link to it. I'll try and find it. And if I do, then I'll put it in the description box. If you don't see it there, then I wasn't able to find it. But it was this woman who was in a 50-50 arrangement with her husband. And then she basically wrote him a letter saying, hey, look, I've looked at the financials for this and I'm going to be losing out like this much money. And it was like, you know, tens of thousands, for taking time off to have this baby, and then I'm going to be losing out this much per year going forward in my career. So can you compensate me for that? And then we'll talk about, you know, we'll do that, splitting the bills according to that. And he was just like, how dare you, like, what are you trying to say, like, and it, you know, it's just, I think it's very unfair. And, you know, ideally you don't want to be going into a relationship where you're just keeping score and playing tit for tat on who paid for this and who paid for that and who's doing this and who's doing that. Like, you want to be in a relationship where things are somewhat equal. Okay, maybe not exactly like, you know, 50-50 in all areas, or 100-100, let's say. You know, it should be both partners putting in 100-100 really. When I say equal, I don't mean the same in every area. And that's the problem that I have with the whole feminist 50-50 narrative and splitting all bills down the middle, because you're just not going to be, like, you might have one partner that just makes a lot more money, but the other person brings in certain qualitative aspects that cannot be measured, and you can't put a price on them. So, you know, this is why you're seeing a lot of women go 4B, because they're just like, a lot of these men, they're lacking emotional skills. They're lacking fundamental relational skills that women have. A lot of women have invested heavily in their relational skills, okay, because women do prioritize relationships kind of statistically across the board more than men. And so they've done a lot of, let's be honest, okay, a lot of us have done a lot of work on ourselves. Men have done other types of work, okay. They've kind of worked on their career and leveling up and things like that, because they think that's what women are looking for. But that's not always what we're looking for, okay. Yes, I do look for a generous provider. I like a man who's generous. I like a man who, you know, will, like, doesn't try and split the bill with me. I find that to be a massive ick. But I'm not like the type of person who like cares what job you do. Like, yes, okay, I do and I don't, okay. I care what job you do. Like, I care what, like, I love that Dom does a job that he's passionate about and that aligns with his morals, okay? And that's where he feels like he's in service to the collective and in service to God. For me, that's the most important thing. Like, I'm not into, like, you know, these dudes who are into, like, you know, have this, like, amazing, well-paid career, but it's just a morally reprehensible career, or like guys that like have, you know, I know a lot of people, they can't speak truth, okay, they can't speak out against all the injustices happening in this world because they have golden handcuffs. So, you know, like Dom got fired from one of his previous jobs because he wouldn't take the the nasal swabs. He's not afraid to stand on business, and I'm so attracted to that. And that's one of the ways that I was able to recognize him, because I'm very much like that as well. Okay, I will just say no to things that just don't align with my morals, even if it means that I lose money. And I've always been taken care of. Like, even if I've, lost a little bit of money for standing up for what I believe in, I've always made it in other areas. It's always just realigned me and realigned me and realigned me until you're eventually on your highest timeline. Now, there is some very dangerous rhetoric that proliferates in the polarity space. I'm not going to name the name of the coach that teaches this. I don't know if he's still teaching it, but it caused a little bit of a stir among some of the other it caused a little bit of a stir among some of the other people in the Hieros Gamos space. Where he was like, yeah, ideally the masculine will provide, but that can sometimes not be 100% possible in the current economic climate. This was a few years ago. Or if he's young and he doesn't have his career together yet. So what I advise couples do is the woman gives her paycheck to the man, and then he decides how it's spent. Because polarity. This is financial abuse, okay, what he's advocating for. He's advocating for financial abuse. It's disgusting. I mean, it did cause a big stir where a lot of people called him out and even named him. He works with like 2 other gross male coaches that teach polarity. Yeah, and it's really harmful, okay? He blocked me as well because he was just like, yeah, if you want a polarized relationship. And I'm just like, okay, do you know what a really polarized relationship is? And I want you guys to take note of this. Ultimate polarity is between a narcissist and a codependent. Okay, so you need to bear that in mind, okay, when you're learning this polarity stuff, that you don't go so into, if you've been too much in your masculine energy, that you don't go so far into your wounded feminine that you end up with a narcissist. Or sometimes flip the other way. I've had clients that have said that they've gone from being with a narcissist to then in their next relationship being with a man who's like in wounded feminine, and they're the one that ends up displaying very narcissistic traits in that relationship. So it does happen, okay, as we heal, that we will be internally polarized and flip from one to the other. Okay, so another thing that I've seen is, don't help a man with his problems. Let him figure it out himself, okay? Because if you step in to help, you're mothering him, you're emasculating him. Like, this is, I don't know, this is so problematic. Yeah, okay, you shouldn't go in and micromanage and tell him what to do and treat him like a child, for sure, okay? Definitely looking at whether you might be emasculating your man is, I think, one of the things that has come out, one of the good things that has come out of the polarity discussion. But completely leaving him to figure it out himself and just being like, oh, well, you'll figure it out, you're a man. It's so harmful and damaging. It will leave your man feeling really alone and like he has to figure everything out himself. And like he's just got some useless woman that doesn't know how to do things and doesn't know how to figure out life. And it's going to put you in a bad situation if you are withholding wisdom that could be useful to help him figure things out. Because you don't want to emasculate him, because polarity, okay? With decisions that are going to affect you and your life and your future and your children, you should be sharing with him your insight, okay? There's a way to do it without emasculating him. You could just be like, hey, I love what you're doing. I really support you. I believe in you. Can I share something? Like, you're focusing on this aspect of your business or your goals or your dreams or whatever it is that he's working on. But have you considered that, if you're not working on this aspect, or if you're not developing this aspect, that, you might not get the results that you're looking for in this aspect? And he might not have even thought of that, okay? You have so many gifts to share as a woman, as a person, as a human being, with your experience and everything that you've learned and your intuition. Don't hold back. just because polarity, okay? These decisions affect you too, and you should be an equal partner in deciding your future together. And just the whole idea of like that the masculine should be the provider and he should figure out everything that you're doing and make all the decisions and figure out how to make the money and you just take care of the home. It's just, you know, life wasn't always that. When they talk about all this, you know, back in the day, that's how it was, that's how we naturally supposed to be. That's actually not how we've been, okay? Like, yes, okay, in many societies that was how it was, okay? Very patriarchal, misogynistic societies. But there were also many, many societies in which women earn a living, okay? There have been lots and lots of industries that have been female dominated for years, for generations, for centuries, okay? Farming, textiles, many things, okay, that have been that women have contributed to greatly. Even science and engineering, okay, the contributions of women in science and engineering, which have been massively obfuscated, have been groundbreaking, okay? And the films like Hidden Figures have discussed things like that, okay? Women are really gifted in many, many areas. Unfortunately, because of media representation and societal programming, a lot of us feel like we're better off in certain, or we'll naturally gravitate towards certain areas. But you'll see culturally, in different countries, like in Iran, for example, you've got like, what was the percentage? I'll actually put it here. I'll look up the exact percentage, but it's really, really high of female students in STEM. Okay. In India, you've got massive numbers of women in medicine. Whereas if you look at societies that are more egalitarian and less patriarchal, like, you know, Scandinavian countries, for example, you see a lot more women in like nursing and teaching and things like that. So I think that my theory for why this happens is because people are always going to try and find a balance, okay? So if you've got a society that's trying to make men and women very equal, like in the Scandinavian countries where women have been kind of, you know, you're just like a man, and, you know, a woman can be sexually empowered and she can, you know, approach a man if she wants to and things like that, you're going to naturally see women lean more towards the feminine roles and things like that. Whereas in societies where women are encouraged to take more of a feminine role, like, you know, motherhood and marriage and things like that, like you see more in the East, you're gonna see a lot of women wanting to take on more education and you know, enter the workforce and things like that, because things are always going to balance out. We're always seeking balance. I think the general trend that you'll see with me debunking a lot of this stuff or adding nuance or caveats to this stuff is basically the problem that I have is when a lot of these teachers are telling men to be exclusively masculine and never display any feminine qualities, and teaching women to be exclusively feminine and never be displaying masculine qualities. And you really need to be integrating both energies in order to be unified, healthy, and whole, okay? And if you go back and look at any of my videos talking about polarity or masculine or feminine, I have always said this. So, you know, yes, there are some things that I want to go back and revisit and add, you know, more upgraded codes, but I have always maintained that you do need to be balanced, okay? As a woman, you need to have masculine integration, and as a man, you need to embody and get to know your own internal feminine. Okay, yeah, the feminine receives and the masculine gives. So as a woman, you're always the receiving one and he's always the giving one. This is problematic because how is a man supposed to give to you if he's not receiving anything? Like if he's basically providing for you, giving you money or paying for things for you, he's able to do that because he's receiving money from his employer. So why would you not also be able to receive? And what are you receiving all of that for? Like, it's so that you can give, okay? There has to be a microcosmic orbit, okay? As you receive, then you give. Now, I do agree that the masculine should give first, and then as the feminine receives, then she overflows and she gives from a full cup, okay? And it goes like that. You feed into each other, okay? You pour life into each other. But ultimately, it creates this feedback loop where essentially you just become very balanced and integrated, the two of you, and you start merging into one, okay? And healing your inner polarities. You know, he starts, as he gets to know you, he starts getting to know his internal feminine, and you know, you start healing your relationship to the masculine and your relationships with him. Okay, now I do think, just to wrap up, because it's getting dark and it'll be nice to wrap up before the light completely runs out. So yeah, to wrap up, I do think that a lot of the polarity teachings are very, very useful for me, like just learning little things like that emotions are your feminine, that's your feminine energy, and like get to know them, don't suppress them, don't feel like there's something wrong or that it's too chaotic or you're too emotional. It really helped me get to know where I had internalized misogyny against my own inner feminine. So it really helped heal my relationship to my own feminine energy. I really started to cultivate it and bring it out and get to know my inner goddess, okay, by connecting to my emotions, connecting to my body. It helped me develop a healthier relationship to my body as well, and a healthier body image, just knowing, like, you know, masculine is like yang, it's like bones and structure and, you know, being thin and muscular, and feminine is like yin and softness. And, you know, it just really, obviously, being a model for 20 years, I had quite an unhealthy relationship to, you know, just flesh on my body. So little things like that were really, really key to helping me in my healing journey. And not just with reclaiming, you know, your feminine shadow as a woman, but also just learning what are masculine traits, because you know, there's so much programming around what it means to be a man and what it means to be like a cool man or like a real man, or that promotes toxic misogyny and toxic masculinity. And when you learn what true masculinity is, particularly divine masculinity, which divine basically means that it's married to its own internal feminine, so the two energies start to become unified. The masculine polarity of the two in union really helped me heal my relationship to the masculine and help me be able to discern more of what is that healthy masculine frequency, and to be able to recognize where I'm seeing toxic masculinity, so I can say, okay, that's not what I want, that's not what I want to be around, and bye-bye, you know, and not deal with it. Because if you find yourself continually getting into relationships with men who embody toxic masculine traits, it's because you still have unhealed wounds around the toxic masculinity that you need to heal from. And so you're vibrationally calling in that experience, not that you're to blame for any of those experiences and what men have done to you, but there will be a vibrational point of attraction where you'll be attracted to that person because they're encouraging you. The experience will get you to feel things that, you know, maybe you have unhealed wounds, like maybe, you know, he reminds you of things that your father did that you have yet to heal and grieve and recognize. So that's why you might continue to have those experiences. So once you really learn to connect and heal your relationship to the masculine and recognize what is toxic masculinity and grieve those things, you know, what was done to you, maybe what was done to your mothers, what was done to your grandmother, like we're really, really reprogramming and healing ancestral trauma when we go on this journey. So it can be very helpful for that. So yeah, there are some teachers in the space that I think are great and that I've learned so much from. Okay, there's some dating coaches, like people like Helena Hart, Adrian Everhart. I think are, you know, I really love how they teach feminine energy. I think they're from like a Rory Ray lineage. Because they teach it with the proper masculine integration and having boundaries and things like that, which are all masculine principles. But there's also some people in the space that I just think haven't really gone very deep, and they don't understand this core principle, which is ultimately about alchemy, and about unifying the two into one. So with that, I'll leave it there. And if you guys want to join me for my upcoming webinar, okay, we are going to be really diving into this subject more. We're going to be talking about Lilith and the feminine shadow, the deep primordial feminine, and we're going to be clearing Lilithian overlays. Okay, we're going to go into the history of this archetype, which I spoke about in episode 13, and connecting to the true divine mother streams, the true divine feminine. Okay, so we are going to be talking about this subject. We're going to go a lot deeper as well, talking about Kabbalah, and clear up some distortions. So if you'd like to join me for that, the link to join is in the description box below. If you're still with me, thanks so much for your attention. I really value your commitment to learning about this subject, and I hope you join me for the webinar. And I will see you in the next episode. Peace out, guys. One love.